Republicans in Congress try to make their first move, and it is to gut the ethics office set up to fight corruption. GOP leaders against it, Donald Trump against it, and hours later, GOP rank and file backtrack and pitch it. Now, we're going to tell you what has been a crazy day here and a rough ride in Washington that's only beginning. Then New York's own Senator Chuck Schumer unveils the Democrats' plan to deal with a new normal. A Republican president, Republicans leading in both the House and the Senate will discuss as well as debate. And then, speaking of New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo announcing a plan that would provide free college tuition to hundreds of thousands of students. But the question is it too good to be true? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, today it marks the first day of the new Congress, the first chance for Republicans on the Hill to show that they can actually govern with a new Republican president set to be sworn in less than 3 weeks. But their first decision not only had them reversing themselves less than 24 hours later, they even attacked what for many is the key question surrounding the Republican president-elect, and I'm talking about ethics. For the details, let's bring in our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. Andrew?
Well, Rich, in a closed-door session only among Republican members yesterday, the House GOP voted to strip away the powers of the Office of Congressional Ethics. The vote came as a surprise to just about everyone not in the caucus. It had not been widely discussed and was not on the radar as a key issue for House Republicans until yesterday. That office is an independent group of 8 nonpartisan overseers, mostly attorneys, charged with investigating House members and employees who are accused of violating laws, rules, or House standards. The office has almost no direct power. It cannot subpoena anyone or anything, much less penalize a lawmaker. And its findings then go to a House committee, elected officials, who then determine what comes of any of its findings. Reactions to that decision? Nearly universal backlash from politicians, including criticisms from both sides of the aisle, as well as in the media, even talk radio. Critics began calling and emailing members of Congress, but there was one very public supporter of the move to quash the ethics office.
We don't want people wrongly accused, and we don't want people mired in months, if not years, of ethical complaint review.
Conway echoing the complaints of the biggest congressional backers of the move against the ethics office, namely House members who have been investigated by the office. But Conway's boss did not agree. President-elect Trump tweeting out his criticism of the move, quote, "With all the Congress has to work on, do they really have to make the weakening of the independent ethics watchdog, as unfair as it may be, their #1 act and priority? Focus on tax reform, health care, and so many other things of far greater importance. Hashtag DTS. We assume that DTS means drain the swamp and not Dancing with the Stars or something else." Perhaps the president-elect sensed how bad the move looked to the public, a feeling summed up by House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi, who said Republicans claim they want to drain the swamp, but the night before the new Congress gets sworn in, the House GOP eliminated the only independent ethics oversight of their actions. Evidently, ethics are the first casualty of the new Republican Congress. Republicans then reversed their decision in a hurried meeting before members were sworn in this afternoon. But aside from the optics, the way the decision makes the House GOP look like they're against ethics, the office does serve a real function. The Office of Congressional Ethics was established in 2008 after a series of scandals involving House members. California Republican Duke Cunningham retired in 2006 after a bribery scandal. Cunningham got a sweetheart deal to buy his house above market value and free access to a yacht in exchange for steering tens of millions of dollars in defense contracts to the people who paid him. In 2005, it was Louisiana Democrat William Jefferson who took money to aid an African internet startup. The lingering memory from his case, that FBI raid that found $90,000 in cold hard cash in the congressman's freezer. And in 2005 and 2006, Ohio Republican Bob Ney was caught in the Jack Abramoff scandal. Abramoff steered a series of high-end gifts to Ney, who then steered favors to Abramoff and his clients, including a native casino in California. Real ethics concerns, Rich, almost swept away by House Republicans yesterday.
Stunningly politically tone deaf here. Let's bring in our panel. Former Democratic New Jersey Congressman Steve Rothman, Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, Jeannie Zaino, professor of political science at Iona College, also senior advisor at the consulting firm Applied Economics, and Andrew Whitman, who you've already met, our senior political correspondent. All right, I'm going to have the congressman unpack what this means, what the office was set up to do, and what they tried to do on it. But Jeannie, I'll first start with you. My God, was this tone deaf? I mean, you couldn't think, I can't think of a dumber first move out of the box than this. stunningly tone deaf, I said, and that's putting it politely.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the way to put it. You know, even if there was a reason to do that, and I say even if, it is not where you start in a new Congress, especially a new Congress with the type of momentum the Republicans potentially could have now having the House, the Senate, and the White House. So stunningly tone deaf. And the fact that they didn't see the criticism coming from miles away, it's such an easy criticism to make. And Nancy Pelosi made it beautifully. Donald Trump made it. It seems like even Speaker of the House Paul Ryan was caught off guard by this move by his fellow Republicans. The one thing I would caution is that there may be good reason to change the way we do ethical investigations in Congress and how Congress controls and patrols itself, but it is not where you start, and simply trying to defund and wipe out this office is certainly not the way to do it, especially without giving us any sense as to what it is that was going wrong there. I mean, that was one big thing that we didn't hear was what didn't you like about that?
Because I know today, and I know that this has gone away, but the audacity of what was tried here, the hypocrisy of what some of the folks, the same ones who wanted to do this, said before about ethics and drain swamp, and then did this in the dead of night. All those things, I think, required. This is a preview of where we're going here with this new Congress. But Dominic, this also showed a lot of political, this is 101 stuff. You wouldn't do. We joke about the city council sometimes in New York City. I mean, forget about that they didn't talk to each other. Forget about, that, they never tried to pass this up the food chain. But not even, an intern could have come up with the idea this is your first move out of the box.
Richard, I think the professor sized this up accurately in terms of the way it looks politically. It's disgusting. It's any word, any adjective you can use to describe this, put it in there. And think about this. I mean, a writer couldn't make this up. Okay, a guy who never served in public office runs for president, says outrageous things, his major issue, drain the swamp, and in the dead of night, a New Year's weekend, coming out New Year's weekend, boom, you have control of the House and Senate, and here you come with your nonsense right out the gate, indicating that this is your top priority.
Okay, Congressman. For people to say, oh, this is just part of the games in Washington, there was a reason, and Andrew set it up here. He reminded us some of the rogues gallery that got busted with 90 grand in a freezer, etc. But these complaints, they kind of put a veneer on this. Well, sometimes you're convicting people before they have a chance to defend themselves. When you read through the language of what they were trying to do, including whistleblowers who see something wrong, that they would publicly have to go on the record here to actually make a complaint, that they could kill the investigation before even the House gets a whiff of it. Give an idea to the public in shorthand just how scummy some of the stuff was that was in this proposal that got killed today.
Well, the whole idea of the proposal was to take the enforcement of the Office of Congressional Ethics away from that office. Again, the office was set up in 2008 in the wake of tremendous scandals, members of Congress stealing lots of money and then going to federal prison for it. I happen to have served with all of those people in Andrew's little preview there. And these were damaging, terrible things. And both sides of the House wanted to address that. And that's why they established this committee with an equal number of Democrats, an equal number of Republicans, with some members historically being former members of Congress who would understand how delicate it would be and how difficult it would be to wantonly accuse a member of Congress of something without real hard evidence. So we had some confidence that these former members, didn't have to be former members, but they are mostly, would take that into account, but nonetheless have the independence and nonpartisan obligation to bring these matters forth to the House Congressional Ethics Committee once they did their investigations. So
the idea that you get rid of this office altogether, you'd eliminate any whistleblower protections, talk about the message that would have sent to rank and file.
Well, it wouldn't have been a good message to the rank and file, and frankly, it wouldn't have been a good message, as my colleagues, the professor and Andrew and Mr. Carter have been saying. You know, a Pew Research poll just came out yesterday, which said that 55% of American adults, 55%, do not have confidence that President Trump will have a scandal-free administration. That's more than half of the people expecting a shoe to drop when it comes to ethics. So talk about in sports what they call an unforced error, or here worse, terrible lack of understanding of where the American people are in terms of the ethics of their elected representatives. That's what you have the Republicans doing here.
It's actually even worse than just, you know, the overall perception that Americans don't trust Congress. You have the most ethically questioned president-elect about to take his oath of office on the 20th, and all of a sudden House Republicans are now saying Republicans on the Hill are basically, we don't really want ethics investigations. We don't really want the message that
and they're more concerned about their own personal perception than investigating one of their own if they do something wrong. But Andrew, to me, there's two other subplots to this beyond just the audacity that they would try this. Reportedly, McCarthy and the Speaker, Paul Ryan, both said to these guys, you guys are crazy. You can't do this. And they basically said, we're going to do it anyway. To me, if you want for me, the major headline that came out of this, they don't have control over their caucus. They don't have control over the rank and file members here. It took a tweet from Trump, or maybe that was the punctuation when they finally saw the way the winds were blowing. That to me says the leadership does not have stick right now.
You know, a lot of people assume that Trump was going to have a problem from the moderate Republicans in the Senate, the McCains, if he's a moderate, Lindsey Graham, the ones who are, I guess, based in reality. But the far right of the party is also going to be just as big a problem for Donald Trump going through this Congress. If they're not happy with what he's offering, if he doesn't go far enough for their liking, that he may see a revolt on that side. The same issue that brought down John Boehner in terms of not being able to control the caucus could be an enormous headache for Paul Ryan and for Donald Trump going this route. As for the Trump tweet, he's getting a lot of credit in circles for having, you know, hit the momentum on this and getting the Republicans to reverse themselves. So that has enabled Trump to put himself on the right side of ethics, where the House Republicans were on the wrong side of ethics. It'll be interesting to see how much longer
But Gene,
that
what
goes.
does it tell you that he didn't know about this till they were doing it? They were doing this without, A, getting the blessing of the Speaker or the Majority Leader, and they didn't even tell the President-elect that ran on the platform of Drain the Swamp, even though I thought it was phony, but anyway, that now, by the way, they were putting all, as they said, the crocodiles back into the swamp here. That to me shows this is major dysfunction right now, and nobody knows who's on first.
Yes, and this has been the problem with the Republican caucus in the House all along, and we've always known it. That's why John Boehner, that's why Paul Ryan is a reluctant speaker. Let's not forget, nobody wanted this job, because this is one of the worst jobs you can have in Washington, D.C. right now, because this caucus is hard to put together. And to Andrew's point, Donald Trump could potentially have a very tough time, because let's not forget, this is a guy who famously likes to bargain. He likes to make deals. Well, deals require compromise, and this part of the caucus is not going to be open to any compromising on anything that they hold dear. How does he bring them behind him? It's going to be very tough for him, and more importantly for Paul Ryan, who's got to bring these folks along.
Yeah, if you wanted a clue as to what we could be looking at, forget about the next 4 years, just the next first 100 days. Today, I think a scary preview. All right. Democrats, as you know, not empowered, but that doesn't mean that they're powerless. Democratic Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer unveiled how his party plans to deal with the Donald as well as Republicans in Congress.